Hello VC, Jeff here with you again. This time for a contest video. There's a couple of contests going on in the VC that I want to get involved in. So I'm going to do that starting right now. This entry is for Dots and Loops, my buddy Dan's channel up in Canada. And his channel is probably second only to Naz Nomad's in terms of longevity. I've watched his channel and David Michael's probably the longest. Like, I discovered David Michael's channel first, but it wasn't very long after that when I came across Dan's channel too. And like I think almost everybody else in the VC, I watched videos for a long time before I decided to start making them. So yeah, I've been probably well, I've been making videos for a year and a half now, almost 2 years, and I probably watched VC type videos regularly for at least a year before that, I would guess, if not more. So yeah, Dan's been a long time favorite channel of mine. So and he's crossed the 2,000 subscriber mark, which is awesome, well deserved. And his contest, which he's holding to celebrate that, is called I Like It. And you can show at least one album minimum, but you can do more. I happen to have 3 here that I'm going to show you. Show albums that you like, but maybe the general majority of listeners don't, or critics, or whoever you might go to or respect for musical opinions on things. So yeah, that's a good idea for a contest. So, and of course, Dan, I love your channel still. Like I said, I've been watching you forever. So you're one of the reasons why I'm here. So thanks for being such a cool guy. Thanks for having such a cool channel and making such cool videos and showing such cool music. I know he's heavily into psych, which I've gotten into some because of him. I have sought out certain albums. You know, I've streamed them online or wherever I could find online and listened, and I found a lot that I really enjoyed. So thank you for that. All right, we're going to get to the contest entry now. First of the 3 albums was a recent spin of mine lately, and it was this album was part of my original collection. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about when I say original collection, it means it was a record that I bought back in the 80s, you know, when I was able to buy music and records or vinyl were still king in terms of format. You know, CDs hadn't really taken off yet, and cassettes, I got into cassettes briefly. I wish I had those albums that I had on cassette on vinyl now. But yeah, I'm just going to show it. It's August by Eric Clapton. This album came out in late '86, so I probably bought it sometime in '87, I would guess. It's back. And this album didn't get a lot of critical love, you know, especially in the music magazines. You know, I used to read, well, I still do read Rolling Stone, but back in the 80s I used to read it quite a lot. And of course I would pore over the album review section. And this album didn't get a lot of love. But based on the strength of the songs I heard, I ended up buying it, ended up really, really enjoying it. In fact, it's a gatefold. I'll just show you the gatefold here real quick. But it's in the way that you use it. Was a not a movie, part of the soundtrack to the movie The Color Money. And that song, along with I'm No Angel by Greg Allman and Freedom Over Spill by Steve Winwood, were the 3 songs I probably heard the most on the radio in '87. And I only remember that because that was the year I got my driver's license and I started driving. So I had this huge, well, it was a 20-year-old car then. It was a 67 Plymouth Fury. It was a giant square box on four wheels. And I ended up having to put an FM radio in it because it didn't have it only had an AM radio. And the only other option on it was a heater and power steering. I think it had power steering, but that was it. It was a pretty bare bones car, but I didn't care. And I remember driving around and playing the radio, and those songs would always come up. I kept hearing "It's in the Way That You Use It," and it's a good song. I mean, I have nothing against it. I'm just saying this for background. But actually, the second song on side one after "It's in the Way That You Use It" is a song called "Run," and that song has been an earworm for me for the last probably 2 weeks. I posted this on Facebook that I played it because I was moving around all my Clapton and Clapton related albums out of my main record cabinet to create some space. So I gave him his own spot in one of these side cubes. And I pulled this album and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. I should play it. I should, see how it sounds. And the song Run came on and I've been humming it in my head ever since. So I'm not going to hum it now. I've been trying to get rid of it. But it's on YouTube if you want to check out the song for yourself. It's called Run by Eric Clapton. And Tina Turner guest stars on here on a song called Tearing Us Apart. He covers the Robert Cray song Bad Influence, which isn't bad. And he does a smoking guitar riff on a song called Miss You. And the last song on here is called Behind the Mask. And that's probably my very favorite song on this whole record. So even though it's produced by Phil Collins, which was a big reason why people bashed this record, he gave Clapton energy. He gave him the oomph to get out of that laid-back groove mode that he'd been in for so many years. He kind of lit a fire under him and got him to sing more passionately and to play more passionately. Of course, it does have the big 80s sound to it, Phil Collins being what he was as a producer, but I think in the long run it helped boost his career again. So, and after this album, he made a string of more highly regarded albums, but I think that wouldn't have happened if this hadn't been done first. So, August by Eric Clapton is my first record for this entry that I like, but maybe not everyone else does. And that's okay because he's got such a big catalog and such a long career. There's not everyone's going to like every single thing he did, so that's okay. Another one that showing as part of this theme is Fleetwood Mac. This is the Mystery to Me album. And I'm just using this to represent kind of a group of albums because when people think of Fleetwood Mac, they either think of the Peter Green era, the early Peter Green era, which was the blues-based sound, or they think of the Buckingham Nicks era, which was Rumors and Beyond. But for about a 4 or 5 year period in the early 70s, this band was led mostly by Bob Welch, and his guitar work tended to be a little more smoother, a little more jazzier. They didn't have such the heavy blues-based sound as they had during the Peter Green era. Christine McVie was in the band, and she took a lot of lead vocals, and Bob Welch did too. And like this album here, don't ask me to explain what this cover means. This is a weird-ass cover. There's the gatefold, for those of you who may not be familiar. But there's albums like this one. Bare Trees was another great album of theirs. Future Games was another great album. And Heroes Are Hard to Find. You could probably cobble together a greatest hits album out of that group, and it would be pretty solid. So while I love the Peter Green era, don't get me wrong, I certainly love the Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks era. In fact, I bitched about the album I showed in my last video, my last Spin Zone. I showed the Behind the Mask album, which did not have Lindsey Buckingham on it, and it was pretty generic sounding. People complain that these are generic sounding too, but I disagree. Like I said, they're kind of a music all on their own. But it's a shame that these records are largely forgotten in the Fleetwood Mac history. So, because it didn't sell in the big numbers as Rumors did, obviously, or any of those albums, and it didn't have the hot blues guitar of Peter Green. But all that said, taken for what they are, I enjoy these albums, and like I said, this is representative of a group of like 3 or 4 albums. So this is my second entry for this contest, and this last one is probably going to be controversial, but I'm only bringing it up because this is the album that broke up the Beatles. I mean, Long and Winding Road, supposedly, right, was the song that was the last straw for Paul McCartney, which he used as the reason why he was breaking the Beatles up, And I've heard and read, critics and other musical powers that be bash this album, saying that it's just, a piece of product that the Beatles put out to salvage something from their Get Back sessions, in 1969, which they famously shelved, and then they went on and made Abbey Road. And then in 1970, they went back and supposedly cobbled together an album. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this if you're familiar at all with the Beatles. But I think this is a great album. Not only does it have the title track, which is one of their all-time classics, Let It Be. I don't hate The Long and Winding Road. I mean, it's not my all-time favorite Beatles song. It's not something I would necessarily reach for if I want to listen to them. But if it came on the radio, I certainly wouldn't turn it off. Or if I played this album all the way through, I wouldn't skip over it. Get Back is on here. That's one of my all-time favorite Beatles songs. Across the Universe, which I think John Lennon ended up hating. I don't know about the other Beatles, but I know John ended up hating that version because Phil Spector got his hands on it and really overproduced it, but I like it. So I know this may not be, I don't know if this is a good enough pick or not, but it's what popped into my head when I was thinking about albums that I like that maybe not everyone else does. I think most people in the VC probably like this album, but maybe at the time of its release or in the years since, opinions change back and forth. So this is another part of my original collection too. I got this for Christmas one year, like in the mid 80s, and it came with the poster, and I hung it on my wall, and it got lost. I took it down after a while, and I don't know what happened to it. So, darn it. I wish I still had the poster to this thing, but be that as it may, I still have the record. And it still sounds good to me. And there's nothing wrong with this album. There's no reason to bash this at all. Let it be. Just let it be. So there you go. There's my entry. Hope you enjoyed it, Dan. I hope everyone else enjoyed it in the VC who watched it. And I'm going to try and get into a couple more contests this week. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, there you go. Take care, everyone. Peace.